Hey, what's up? This is part 4 of Islam and the problem with sin. Because the Bible views man as utterly sinful. When Adam and Eve sinned, it did not just affect them in a minimum way. In fact, Scripture teaches that Adam and Eve spiritually died immediately. That day they partook of the forbidden fruit. The word death in the Bible carries a twofold meaning. It carries the idea of separation, physical. The twofold meaning is physical. That involves a spiritual, that involves the separation of the soul and spirit when the body dies. Spiritual, it involves the separation of the human being from God. When Adam and Eve sinned and they partook of the forbidden fruit, they immediately were separated from God in a spiritual sense. This is why they felt their guilt, their shame. They knew they were naked. That moment of their sin, they became dead in their trespasses and sins. In Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, their spiritual separation from God immediately led to their spiritual death. Evident for sin, just look in the mirror. Really look in the mirror. Evidence for our physical decay. Let me see. Well, I have my medication. I take medication every day because my body's at war of itself with my MS. Also, the Islamic view of Adam and Eve did not sin. Also, contrary to the Muslim view, Adam and Eve's sin did not affect them in an isolated way, but affected the entire human race. In fact, ever since then, every human being is born into a world that has been. Every human being born into the world has been born into a state of sin. This is what we mean by original sin. Just the Apostle Paul said in Romans chapter 5, just as sin entered into the world, so death by one man. This is where death comes from. Romans chapter 5, verse 19. Through the disobedience of one man made many men sinners. Death came through one man, and in Adam all died. In Psalms 51 verses 5, surely I was born, surely I was sinful at birth, sinful that day that my mother conceived me. According to that particular Psalms 51, or according to verses as such in Psalms 53 1 through 3 and Genesis 8:21, human beings are born into a world. Our human beings are born into a world in a state of sin. We're born into this world that is sinful because we're sinful. The sin nature is passed from conception. This is why Ephesians 2:3 says that we are by nature objects of wrath. So let me ask you a couple of questions. The Bible clearly teaches us that we are deceiving ourselves if we say we have no sin. Muslim, you are deceiving yourself. That's 1 John 1:8. Have you considered the possibility that a prime manifestation of your sin in your own human heart is the denial that there is no problem of sin? One thing that has gotten my attention is Charles Spurgeon's statement when he said, he who doubts their own human depravity had better study himself. I know that there's sin in me. Do you think that there's sin in you? A few verses that you could reflect upon is Romans 5:12, verses 19 as well. Psalms 51 verses 5, Ecclesiastes 7 and 20, and Isaiah 64 verse 6. Sin is everywhere, people. All you have to do is just look at the empirical evidence in the world, because it seems to support the Christian teachings on man's depravity and fallenness, rather than the idea of alleged innate goodness or feebleness and forgetfulness, as Islam likes to claim. Look in your own world. John Ankerberg has observed that since 600 BC, the world has known only 292 years of peace. In that period, stretching more than 55 centuries, there have been incredible 14,531 wars in which 3.6 billion people have been killed. In this same vein, Christian missionary to Muslims, his name is David Shenk, writes, "Did you listen to the radio today? Did you listen to the news? Perhaps the radio told about fighting. Maybe you heard about hunger or floods or accidents. Perhaps you heard about terrible in London, Nairobi, Cairo, and New York. Most of the news is apparently bad, if not all. So much problem in the world." And this is what led Bart Ehrman to reject God, because he had a weak view of sin. If you read his new book, he has inconsistent stories of why he left the faith. Hence, I say he never was part of the faith. He was just an apostate, false believer anyways. In his earlier books, it says it's because of the textual problems, doing textual criticism. In his latest book, he gives the real problem. It's human suffering. He doesn't get past it because he never took the biblical case seriously. And neither do you, Muslim.